Welcome to a space where ancient stories come alive. We dive into the past so you can relax and drift off to sleep. Remember, by the end of our historical journey, you'll feel light and at ease. Close your eyes and let's begin our tale. Sparta holds a unique place in ancient Greek history. Unlike other city-states known for their theaters, philosophical schools, and political innovations, Sparta followed a different path. This city didn't seek cultural influence or trade expansion, but remained forever etched in history as one of the most resilient and unusual poles of its time. Interest in Sparta isn't limited to historians. The image of this city still thrives in culture and language, as well as in public perception. Most often, Sparta is associated with discipline, strict upbringing, and a readiness for self-sacrifice. In the collective imagination, images arise, like silent warriors at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, standing firm until the end. Sparta is frequently contrasted with Athens, where words, initiative, and freedom of discussion held great importance. Gradually, this perception of Sparta formed based on ancient sources, scholarly interpretations, and images created in cinema, literature, and propaganda. Today, Sparta is seen as a society where the state's interests dictated all other aspects of life. From an early age, individuals were integrated into a strict system where their lives served a common goal: behavior, thinking, and actions. Everything revolved around the idea of maintaining stable order, including upbringing, daily life, and the distribution of roles within society. All these elements worked to ensure that citizens acted harmoniously and without hesitation. The legend of Sparta emerged from a specific historical situation. It was a relatively small city, surrounded by a dependent and often discontented population. Sparta's security relied on internal organization and readiness to act at any moment. The society operated in a state of constant mobilization, allowing it to maintain resilience, even amid external instability. The military power of Sparta resulted from a social structure where the army was an integral part of everyday life. The upbringing of children, daily routines, dietary structures, and property ownership were designed so that participation in battle felt like a natural duty, not an exceptional event. In this lecture, we'll explore how the Spartan model of society arose, what contributed to its long-lasting resilience, and why its experience continues to fascinate. We'll focus not only on the military side, but also on the social and cultural mechanisms that supported it. Sparta developed in the southern part of the Peloponnese, in an area known as Laconia. It was an elongated valley squeezed between two mountain ranges, Taygetus to the west and Parnon to the east. At the center flowed the Eurotas River, along which all economic and political life in the region unfolded. The city emerged deep within the plain, away from the coast, in fertile agricultural lands. This location didn't promote active external connections, but allowed for control over everything happening inside. Laconia was limited and manageable, fostering a unified center for governing the entire plain. The best farmland lay along the river, and the soils provided stable harvests, especially in spring and autumn. Summer droughts and winter cold demanded careful resource management. This type of farming, constant and organized, created a foundation for sustainable order. The city's architecture reflected the same principles. Development occurred without a strict plan but followed practical logic. Buildings stood close to the ground with minimal decoration. Central structures like temples and barracks fulfilled their functions without showcasing wealth. Simplicity was seen as a mark of dignity, and the layout of the city encouraged overall restraint. Sparta didn't build defensive walls. Its location, distanced from maritime threats and surrounded by mountains, reduced the need for fortifications. Internal organization, the army, order, and collective readiness formed the main pillar of defense. The city was open but always under constant surveillance. The system didn't allow for secrecy, relying on discipline. The geography of Laconia supported the formation of a closed and organized model, where everyone knew their role an authority could monitor and regulate everything happening. This became the basis of Spartan order. The territory of Laconia had been populated long before Sparta's emergence. Even in the Bronze Age, agricultural settlements existed along the Eurotas River, connected to the Mycenaean world. These communities engaged in farming, built homes from stone and clay, buried their dead in mounds, and, according to archaeological findings, were influenced by Mycenaean culture. Here lived the Achaeans, carriers of early Greek tradition, who controlled these lands until the onset of the Great Migrations. Around the end of the 10th century BCE, against the backdrop of the general decline of the Mycenaean system, large-scale migrations began. New tribes speaking different dialects and having their customs and military organization arrived in the Peloponnese. Later, they'd be called the Dorians. These people brought a different organizational model, focused on military structure, independent of palace traditions. Migration occurred in waves, but its results had a decisive impact on the region's future. The Dorians occupied the Eurotas Valley and began establishing their settlements. Old Achaean centers either ceased to exist or were absorbed. The local population persisted but lost its autonomy. A process unfolded, resulting in the upper echelons of society consisting of incoming military clans, while the locals found themselves in a subordinate position. The formation of Sparta occurred gradually. According to ancient sources, the city emerged from 4 settlements: Limnae, Mesoa, Pitana, and Conora. These villages were situated close to each other, along the river on fertile plains. At some point, they united into a single political entity, marking an important milestone. It was then that Sparta transitioned from merely a gathering of settlements into an organized polis. By this time, the Dorians had already established themselves in Laconia, controlling the main lands along the river. The locals were assigned different statuses, leading to a new society based on lineage. Descendants of pre-Dorian clans gained full citizenship status, while others, generally descendants of the local population, retained personal freedom but lacked political rights. Thus began social stratification, which eventually formed a rigid hierarchical system. Military power and land control became the main instruments. Territory was gradually seized, with each plot having its purpose. Land provided harvests, defined status, and granted the right to participate in the life of the polis. The distribution of land meant the opportunity to take part in the council, assemblies, and the army, while those without land remained in secondary roles. The city that emerged from this unification had unique features. It lay on a plain, stretching along the riverbanks, and had a decentralized organization. Development occurred without a clear plan. Unlike Athenian squares or the fortifications of Tiryns, Sparta lacked massive walls and impressive public spaces. The focus rested on practical aspects, durability, and, after consolidating power in Laconia, the Spartans began expanding westward. Beyond the Taygetus Mountains lay Messenia, a rich and fertile region with valuable resources and a convenient location. The land provided stable harvests, the climate was milder, and the plains were broader. Messenia's potential far exceeded that of Laconia. Its population adhered to Dorian traditions. Communities residing here inherited Mycenaean legacies and maintained their own systems of governance, economy, and military organization. Subduing Messenia wasn't an easy task. It required prolonged pressure. In ancient literature, this conflict is referred to as the First Messenian War. Hostilities lasted around 20 years. The Spartans waged war in phases, conquering areas and gaining a foothold. After the war, the Messenian people came under control. They weren't expelled or physically destroyed. Most remained on their land but lost political independence. The land was redistributed among Spartan citizens. The local population found itself in a subordinate status and became the basis for a unique legal status that would later be called Helotism. These people continued farming, but could no longer participate in decision-making and had no rights to land. The conquest of Messenia radically altered the balance in Sparta. A significant number of subordinates, tied to specific territories, joined the small minority of full citizens excluded from the political system. This created ongoing demographic tension. Ancient authors estimated the dependent population vastly outnumbered the citizens. The ratio was unstable, and the Spartans were aware of it. From this point on, internal stability became as crucial for Sparta as protection from external threats. The system began developing permanent mechanisms for surveillance, suppression, and control. Society viewed this not as an exception, but as part of the established order. Maintaining citizen status required not just participation in assemblies, but also readiness for action within the polis. The fear of losing control became a common state of affairs. Sparta didn't pursue expansion for new land. It sought stability. However, each conquest brought not only territory, but also new risks. This required action. Therefore, the entire political structure evolved under conditions of numerical pressure and constant internal tension. Sparta functioned like an army stationed in the heart of the country. With increased resources, a stricter organization became necessary to keep the system balanced. Spartan society wasn't divided into rich and poor. It separated those who held the right to decide the fate of the police from everyone else. Central to this system were the Spartiates, or those referred to as citizens. They were few in number, but formed the foundation of the political and military structure. The status of Spartiates was hereditary and couldn't be earned through merit or assembly decision. It passed by blood from citizen to son. Even in Sparta itself, the number of such individuals was limited. Over time, their numbers dwindled, directly impacting the system's stability. A full-fledged Spartiate had special rights. He owned a plot of land with the right to use it for life. Although the land was considered state property, it was tied to a clan. Others, mainly dependent farmers attached to the plot, were to cultivate it. Spartiates didn't engage in agriculture. Their primary task was to serve in the army, participate in assemblies, raise offspring, and uphold the order. Military training began at an early age. By age 7, boys were taken from their families and sent into the agoge education system. From then on, they no longer belonged to their households. They were taught not to express opinions but to listen, not to complain but to endure. Everything focused on discipline, collective action, and resilience under pressure. Spartiates were raised as part of the communal order. When a boy became a young man, he underwent trials. If he passed successfully, he was admitted into the male society. From that moment, he gained the right to eat in the communal dining hall and was considered part of the citizen body. Without participation in this circle, a person lost political rights. He could remain a resident of the city but no longer counted as a citizen. Military service continued for nearly the entirety of adult life. A Spartiate had to be ready for mobilization at any moment. The system didn't allow for private employment. A citizen's time, strength, and attention belonged to the police. Everything else was considered secondary. Even family was viewed as a link between generations, not as a personal sphere. The main task was to maintain order, support comrades, and pass the system on. The number of Spartiates gradually declined for several reasons. Not every child passed the selection, and not every young man could endure training. Those who couldn't ensure participation in the communal meal were also excluded. As a result, by the classical period, the number of full citizens shrank to just a few thousand. This created tension within the system. Citizens held power, but their numbers dwindled while the number of dependents grew. The status of a Spartiate did not bring wealth. It didn't guarantee luxury, but imposed constant obligations. It was a status that needed daily maintenance through behavior, service, and participation in the life of the police. Avoiding this was unacceptable. A Spartiate had no personal freedom. He was the bearer of the political system. This was the foundation of his role, to maintain balance in a system where power relied on personal discipline and readiness to uphold order. Helots formed the dependent layer of the population in Sparta. Their condition differed from other forms of slavery in the Greek world. They didn't belong to private individuals but to the state. This status was legally established and passed down through inheritance. Helots worked the land they lived on and remained attached to it within the broader distribution system. Most Helots came from Messenia, a vast region conquered by the Spartans after prolonged military campaigns. After the conquest, most local inhabitants stayed on their territories, but in a new status. They kept their families, homes, and agricultural traditions, but were incorporated into the polis structure as a labor force. Their task was to cultivate the plots assigned to citizens. The harvested crops were sent in a fixed share to benefit the Spartiates who held the plot. Sparta's economy depended on the labor of Helots. They provided food for the army, educational institutions, and communal dining halls. All essential agricultural production functions were carried out by them. This allowed Spartiates to focus on military service, politics, and participation in assemblies. Agriculture, food procurement, and seasonal work were their primary tasks. The activities of the dependent population supported the society's functioning. Their existence unfolded in rural communities under strict government control. They weren't called to serve in the army. Their main responsibilities remained continuous labor on the land, fulfilling obligations, and adhering to state-set norms. The number of dependents significantly exceeded that of full citizens. In some regions, there were up to 5 dependents for every citizen, creating demographic tension. Managing such a population required a clear system, control that Sparta gradually established, including surveillance, strict limitations, and special methods of influence. One of these methods was the creation of the crypteia. Young citizens learned to identify potential threats among the subjugated, acting quickly and discreetly. This wasn't an army in the traditional sense. It was more of an observation service within society. Through such practices, the state demonstrated its power and emphasized the subordinate status of the dependent population. The behavior of the subjugated was closely regulated, their movements tracked, and access to weapons, participation in religious celebrations, and other public events was severely restricted. Even daily life followed rules concerning clothing, manners of communication, and customs. Any sign of independence was seen as an attempt to disrupt the established order. Nevertheless, the subjugated led ordinary lives, formed families, and passed down their traditions and language. Their presence in city life remained significant, as they lived alongside citizens and worked the same lands, transmitting knowledge from generation to generation. Their status made them both indispensable and objects of constant surveillance. The Spartan societal model couldn't exist without this layer. The labor of the subjugated provided stability to the system, while their constant presence set the rhythm of domestic policy. This required control, discipline, and military readiness. All these aspects formed in response to the need to manage a large population of subjugated individuals. Helots became the backbone of the economy and the foundation of Spartan rigor. There was also a special category of free residents known as Perioeci. They maintained their independence, owned property, lived in their own towns, had families, and could manage their labor, but lacked political rights and couldn't participate in assemblies. Their role was determined by their place in the social structure. The term perioeci translates to those who live around and refers to people inhabiting the border areas of Lacedaemon. Their communities often lay closer to the coast or in mountainous regions. They engaged in crafts, trade, and construction, owning workshops and ships. The state recognized their right to property, but didn't classify them as full citizens. During military actions, the Perioeci formed part of the Spartan army. fighting in infantry and guarding fortresses and roads. Military service was mandatory for them, but they remained outside the decision-making circles after battles. Their status provided Sparta with essential functions, as the Perioeci formed the basis of urban and craft life, producing weapons, sewing clothes, and processing metals. All the trading and economic needs of the city were met through them. Spartans didn't engage in crafts, and the subjugated focused only on agricultural labor, so the Perioeci filled all intermediary tasks. They also became the link between Sparta and the outside world, facilitating the transportation of goods and developing ports and warehouses. The Perioeci spoke the same dialect as the citizens, practiced the same cults, and participated in festivals while remaining outside political life. The Spartan system was built not on oppression, but on a strict division of roles and responsibilities. Everyone knew their place. The Spartiates made decisions and governed. The Perioeci labored and served, while the subjugated provided food and resources. Clear boundaries existed between these layers, which never crossed. This wasn't a formal prohibition, but a consequence of the very structure of society. The hierarchy allowed Sparta to maintain stability for centuries. Citizens received ideology. Perioeci got the chance to live under protection, while subjugated individuals ensured a steady, albeit harsh, rhythm. Sparta didn't rely on repression, but on familiar frameworks, refusing to allow any slack. Any leniency could lead to the collapse of the system, so all aspects were strictly reproduced. Education in Sparta began at a very young age. A child was considered a potential part of society from the moment of birth. Recognition of the child occurred through a collective decision when the family brought the infant to the elders, who would pass judgment on its worthiness. This moment inspired one of the most famous images associated with the Taygetus rock. Ancient tradition mentions a place where infants deemed unfit were left, as described by Plutarch, who lived much later. Archaeological finds don't confirm the practice of mass infanticide, but even if it was only a symbolic exclusion, the essence is important. Participation in the Spartan system wasn't granted at birth. It was determined by society's decision. After approval, the child remained with the family for a short time. Then, at the age of 7, was taken and integrated into the state education system. This system was called AG and represented not a school in the modern sense, but a complete way of life designed to form a person fully integrated into the existing order. Education began with simple things: routines, habits, and restrictions. Boys lived in groups, slept next to each other, and adhered to a common rhythm, without excessive knowledge or random interests. The primary focus was on endurance, attentiveness, patience, and complete integration into the collective. Individuality wasn't nurtured. The goal was to create a form capable of withstanding pressures. The education of speech held particular significance. Spartans discouraged lengthy narratives and vibrant rhetoric, teaching brevity and clarity, speaking only when necessary. This led to the formation of the concept of laconicism, linked to the region of Laconia, where it was said that short and precise speech represented the Spartan style. This was a result of education, not a personal trait. Brevity reflected clarity of thought. The fewer words, the clearer the task. Spartan restraint was formed from childhood through limited food, identical clothing, and equal conditions. The ability to speak little meant precision. Education encompassed everything except excess. Writing and reading were taught, but weren't an ultimate goal. Histories, poems, and laws were transmitted orally and served as tools for shaping resilience. The main point was to develop character rather than accumulate knowledge. Sparta shaped the carriers of a system where everyone knew when to be silent, when to listen, and when to act. As they grew, the students were assigned various tasks. Some stayed within the city, while others ventured to more remote areas. Here, their ability to act independently was tested. No one accompanied them. They had a set routine, a specific goal, and a task. The results of completing assignments were evaluated based on outcomes. This practice prepared them for a life where attention, observation, and the ability to maintain control were valued more than physical strength. The completion of the education program occurred at 18. However, even after that, the status of citizenship wasn't yet confirmed. For full initiation, a young man had to be accepted into the Syssitia Brotherhood, where communal meals took place. Participation in these events made him equal among others. Only after this could he participate in assemblies, engage in war, and influence the fate of his city. All this made the education program unique. It not only taught but shaped behavior, and through it, a structure based on rules and habits was created. The goal wasn't to raise a person with a set of create a citizen with everything embedded in order. In early childhood, a Spartan boy's life differed drastically from the usual home comforts. With entry into the educational system, he became part of a unified community, where each morning a strict rhythm established a new reality. In this collective, order prevailed, where each individual's behavior affected the entire group. During the first days in the barracks, a new way of life emerged. Children gathered in spacious but simple tents, where sounds of formations and quiet commands exchanged through the looks of older students could be heard. Here, character formed, laying the foundation for the future Spartan citizen. Each day began with an early rise, as the first rays of sunlight gently illuminated the shared territory. Mornings were marked by formations and quick physical exercises, where every movement was refined to perfection. Training occurred outdoors, surrounded by the camp, free from excesses. Everything served one purpose: to instill stability and endurance that defined personality. Young Spartans practiced hand-to-hand combat, honed their wrestling skills, and learned to handle weapons. Their movements repeated with such precision that they could be compared to the rhythm of clocks, and the entire system revolved around the ideas of balanced body and spirit development. The diet in the educational camp followed strict rules. Each meal happened according to a set schedule and in specific quantities. Children received enough food to sustain their strength, but always felt a slight lack. This served as motivation to develop control over their energy and manage their resources under constant physical strain. A mild hunger heightened the senses, teaching attentiveness and forcing concentration on every task. Gradually, children learned to extract strength from simple, modest meals needed for further preparation. The communal space of the group created an atmosphere of unity. Youngsters engaged in joint training, performed household tasks, participated in formations and drill exercises. Older students set examples of how to conduct themselves, how to react to subtle impulses, and how to remain composed in any situation. With maturity came a transitional phase, where Spartans were sent beyond the familiar camp. Young men were entrusted with missions in rural areas, inhabited by dependent residents and helots. This phase was known as the Crypteia. The youth ventured into a world devoid of familiar sounds and faces, where the only guide became internal discipline. Their mission involved observing helot life, assessing situations, and, if needed, discreetly eliminating threats to maintain order. In these fields, young men acted independently, relying on skills acquired earlier. They moved cautiously along rural paths, knife in hand, attentively monitoring subtle signs of activity. They had to decide when to intervene and execute their mission unseen. This practice instilled the ability to act with complete independence, where each action was based not on commands but on personal judgment, honed over years of collective upbringing. Upon returning from the Crypteia, Their ability to maintain composure alone, choose the right moments for action, and stay calm was evaluated. The results became evident through the absence of disturbances in communities where helots lived. Then, the Spartan was invited to participate in the syssitia, the communal meal of the adult community, where he became equal to other citizens. The final test took various forms. Sometimes it involved crossing a challenging mountain pass. Sometimes it required performing tasks under conditions of sleep and food deprivation. Each case assessed the ability to maintain self-control, make decisions amid uncertainty, and preserve character strength. These trials marked the culmination of a long educational process, proving the youth's readiness to live by the strict principles of Sparta. After completing all stages, a participant became a full citizen. He received not only land and weapons, but also the right to participate in the governance of the police, becoming part of a unified structure. Everything that began in the group through daily repetitions transitioned into consciousness as an indisputable norm, ultimately transforming into the maturity necessary for life in adult Sparta. The military system of Sparta centered around heavily armed infantry formations. All training for Spartan citizens aimed to ensure they could take their place in the phalanx without disrupting its movements. The army represented a constant existence for the police. Men, raised from childhood in shared discipline, continued to live closely, train together, and go into battle as a single entity. The weaponry was designed for a tight formation. The centerpiece of the equipment was a round wooden shield reinforced with bronze. Its function was not only to protect the fighter, but also to shield part of the body of the neighbor on the left. This created a dense, closed line with shields overlapping and leaving no gaps. The shield rested on the left forearm, held from the inside, allowing hands to remain free for the spear. The bronze helmet almost completely covered the head. A narrow slit for the eyes limited visibility, but provided reliable protection. This heightened concentration. The fighter looked only forward, primarily aware of his own breathing. Instead of turning around, he relied on the formation. Everything happening to the sides and behind was monitored by those standing close by. The bronze cuirass protected the chest and back. It was rigid, molded to the shape of the body, and strapped on. Greaves covered the shins, ensuring protection without restricting movement. All equipment fit snugly, did not hinder motion, and withstood pressure in formation. The spear served as the primary weapon. It measured about 2 meters in length and wasn't meant for throwing. It delivered direct thrusts forward, using both hands. The bronze tip pierced the opponent's shield or targeted vulnerable points. The other end of the spear was sometimes reinforced with a thickened tip, serving as a counterweight, and could be used as a backup weapon. The sword was used less frequently. It was short and convenient for close combat when formations closed in. The system became increasingly less effective. The phalanx formed as a compact rectangular column. Spartans lined up in several rows, creating a sturdy combat unit. The front line protected using shields and spears, while the rear ranks added pressure and supported mass. Every position in the formation held importance. Each warrior knew who was to the left and right, who covered behind, and who they could rely on. Movement occurred slowly but steadily. The formation advanced step by step, remaining closed. This created an atmosphere of pressure that was hard to prepare for. The primary feature of the Spartan phalanx was its precision. Tactical maneuvers allowed no room for improvisation. All actions were practiced in advance during training. The army moved quietly, without unnecessary shouts or signals. Commands were conveyed through signs, voice, and a common rhythm. The commander was positioned within the phalanx, moving in line with the others. His authority rested not on individual orders but on maintaining the formation. Tactics boiled down to of the government, ensuring accountability. They held significant power, including the ability to indict kings if necessary. The ephors also oversaw education and the conduct of citizens, maintaining social order. Their annual election ensured they remained in touch with the populace's needs and grievances. The Apella, or Assembly of Citizens, consisted of all Spartan males over the age of 30. This assembly had the right to vote on proposals made by the Gerousia. While their powers were limited, their participation emphasized the importance of civic engagement. Decisions made in the Apella reflected the collective will of the citizens. Together, these institutions created a complex balance of power. The dual kingship prevented any single ruler from becoming tyrannical. The Gerousia provided wisdom and guidance, while the ephors held the kings accountable. This system ensured stability and resilience in Spartan society. The combination of military might and civic responsibility defined Sparta. The unique structure of governance set it apart from other Greek city-states. The rigorous training, education, and familial roles of Spartan women contributed to this. Their involvement in public life and property ownership challenged traditional norms. Spartan women were not just mothers, they were pivotal to the state's strength. They raised warriors and maintained the household, ensuring continuity during times of war. Their influence extended beyond the domestic sphere, shaping Spartan culture and values. In a society where every citizen had a role, unity was paramount. The Spartan system thrived on collaboration between men and women. Each contributed to the strength and stability of the state, making Sparta a formidable power in ancient Greece. Of kings, Plutarch reports that the ephors had the right to summon the king to court, impose fines, or even depose him if he violated traditions. They managed daily life, overseeing the education of youth and adherence to customs. The Apella consisted of all full Spartan citizens over 30, meeting monthly outdoors. The people expressed their approval or disapproval of the Gerousia's proposals through shouts, elected ephors and elders, and decided matters of war and peace. This mechanism distributed power among kings, sages, supervisors, and the people, creating a complex yet cohesive system. The system of control, balance, and stability maintained order in Sparta, protecting it from internal upheaval. Kings led, but their actions were limited by the ephors, who, in turn, were subject to the laws discussed by the Gerousia. The Apella gave the people a voice, but did not allow them to change the foundations set by Lycurgus. Aristotle praised Sparta for its harmonious blend of monarchy, oligarchy, and democracy. Kings symbolized the power of one. The Gerousia represented the power of the few, while the Apella embodied the authority of the people. The ephors swore an oath yearly to the kings to uphold the laws, and the kings pledged to rule justly, strengthening mutual trust. For instance, in the 5th century BCE, the ephors punished a king for attempting secret negotiations with the Persians, demonstrating that even royal power was subject to oversight. Herodotus describes how the Apella unanimously rejected a peace proposal from Athens, deciding to continue the fight. This system excluded arbitrariness. Each governing body balanced the others, while the laws of Lycurgus, both written and oral, remained unbreakable. Spartan policy focused on maintaining order for military strength. Kings inspired the army and the people. The Gerousia ensured wisdom and continuity. The ephors enforced discipline, while the Apella provided Spartans with a sense of involvement in governance. Plutarch quotes Lycurgus, "A state is powerful when all its parts work in harmony. This harmony allowed Sparta to handle crises, like wars with the Persians or Helot uprisings, maintaining stability where other city-states fell apart. For example, in the 6th century BCE, when King Cleomenes III sought to strengthen his powers, the ephors and Gerousia stopped him, restoring balance. The Spartan political system contrasted with Athenian democracy and the tyranny of other cities. In Athens, power passed directly to the people through voting, while in Sparta, the people participated under the elders and ephors' oversight. A tyrant could seize power in Corinth or Syracuse, But in Sparta, two kings, the Gerousia and the Ephors, prevented any one person from dominating. This structure maintained balance, where duty to the state outweighed personal ambitions. Spartans took pride in their system, viewing it as a gift from the gods or Lycurgus, whose laws preserved order for centuries. Thus, Sparta's political system created a state of strict order, where two kings led the people, and control and balance ensured stability. This structure reflected Spartan spirit, unity, discipline, and commitment to the common good, as previously mentioned. It made Sparta a symbol of strength and resilience, whose glory lived on. Life in Sparta unfolded within strict order, where each day contributed to the state's strength. Spartans gathered at communal tables, sharing simple meals, lived austerely, rejecting wealth, and found support in faith and traditions. Their daily life, labor, and beliefs intertwined, creating a community where personal interests yielded to the common good. Male citizens met in Cilicia, forming groups of 15 in modest halls. Each brought barley flour, wine, a bit of cheese or figs, and occasionally meat from hunting. The main dish remained a thick black soup of pork, blood, and vinegar, symbolizing their moderation. At the table, they discussed Spartan affairs, joked, and offered guidance to the youth who listened to their elders. These meals kept everyone in check. A latecomer or someone who avoided Cilicia faced fines or exclusion, which stripped him of honor. Such gatherings strengthened social bonds, emphasizing the importance of unity. Spartans lived austerely, avoiding luxury. Instead of gold and silver, they used iron money. Heavy bars burned in fire to have no value outside Sparta. One bar weighed over 1 kilogram, and buying required a whole pile of metal, making wealth practically useless. Their clothing consisted of coarse red cloaks, and their beds of reeds. They built homes from clay and wood, using only axes and saws. This lifestyle blurred differences, making the rich appear like the poor from warriors to kings. Living in such simplicity hardened them, directing their efforts toward defense and labor. Faith in the gods and reverence for the past filled their days with meaning. Spartans worshipped Apollo, Ares, and Artemis, seeing them as protectors of their way. Temples such as the sanctuary of Artemis came alive with the sounds of rituals, where they made sacrifices and praised divine will. Before campaigns, kings consulted the oracle, and priests interpreted signs in the smoking entrails of animals. Lycurgus, whose laws guided Sparta, was revered as a messenger of the gods, and his rules were considered sacred. During festivals like the Gymnopaidia, people gathered, danced, and sang, celebrating the gods and their land. These traditions wove them into a single community, proud of their heritage. Labor held an important place in their lives. Men devoted themselves to military service, honing skills in training and campaigns. Women managed the household, raising children and preparing them for future challenges. Helots, the conquered people of Messenia, worked the fields, growing barley and grapes to feed citizens. Each warrior shared a portion of the harvest at Cilicia, supporting their comrades. Young boys learned survival skills by stealing food from helots under the watchful eyes of elders, developing agility and resilience. Crafts remained modest. Blacksmiths forged spears, while women wove coarse fabric without unnecessary embellishments. Everyone contributed, whether a warrior in battle or a farmer in the field. Spartan life stood out against the habits of other Greeks. Athenians were surrounded by mosaics, vibrant clothes, and clinking coins, while Spartans were content with clay walls, wool, and iron money. Corinthians built wealthy ports, while Sparta stood firmly on land, maintaining strict discipline. One Spartan told a stranger, "We live in a way that desires do not bind us, and things do not own us." This principle fostered equality and strength of spirit. From an early age, children went barefoot and limited their food intake, growing accustomed to hardships for the future of Sparta. Syssitia provided for the people, austerity eliminated envy, and faith in God or Lycurgus gave them purpose. Spartans saw themselves as guardians of the order established centuries ago. This confidence allowed them to withstand battles with the Persians in the 5th century BCE and control the Helots. Their days might seem harsh, but it was this severity that made them a formidable force, earning respect from neighbors. Life in Sparta. Filled with strict asceticism, it shaped warriors ready to defend Hellas in times of great threat. Their spears reached for the heavens, and shields formed an impenetrable wall to meet the enemy with unwavering will. Spartan glory was born on the battlefields, where they showcased the strength of unity and honor. Let's turn to the Greco-Persian Wars, the feats at Thermopylae, and the history of Leonidas and his 300 Spartans, where facts intertwine with myths. The Greco-Persian Wars marked a time when Sparta stood against the Eastern giant to protect Hellas. In the 5th century BCE, Persian king Xerxes gathered a massive army to conquer the free cities of Greece. Warriors from Media, Bactria, and India, Scythians and Egyptians, marched under his banner. Their numbers exceeded tens of thousands. Xerxes built a bridge of ships across the Hellespont, while his fleet, resembling a pack of predatory birds, moved along the shores threatening to engulf Hellas. Sparta, allied with Athens and other city-states, rose to defend freedom. In 480 BCE, the Persian march led to Thermopylae, a narrow gorge between rocks and the sea, where the Spartans decided to halt the enemy. This battle became a symbol of valor in the face of overwhelming force. Leonidas, a king from the Aegean dynasty, led 300 Spartans to Thermopylae. But why did he choose so few, leaving thousands of warriors in Sparta? Their strength could have numbered in the thousands of hoplites. However, the Koroneia festival, dedicated to Apollo, limited Sparta's actions. A full campaign would break a sacred oath, and the Persian shadow already loomed over Hellas. Leonidas selected 300 men from an elite group of bodyguards, each of whom was a son, to ensure their lineage would not fade. About 1,000 allies joined them, Thebans, Phocians, and Locrians, bringing the total to 4,000 initially. This was the vanguard, tasked with delaying Xerxes and giving Sparta and Greece time to gather their main forces for a counterattack. Fighting at Thermopylae began on the first day when the Persians sent in the Median infantry. The Spartans formed a phalanx in the gorge, no more than 20 meters wide. Hoplites created a bronze wall. Spearheads measuring 2.5 meters surged toward the enemy. Medians fell under the hail of blows. Their light shields cracked under the Spartan onslaught. Xerxes deployed the Immortals, 10,000 elite warriors whose name thundered across the empire. They were called so because the fallen were immediately replaced by fresh fighters, maintaining their ranks. In scale armor with short spears and woven shields, they charged at the Greeks. Spears broke, and Persian bodies fell under sword strikes. Blood flowed like a river. Phocians and Thebans held the flanks, their pikes and shields reinforcing the defense. By evening, the gorge became a grave for hundreds of Persians, while the Spartans stood unwavering. The second day brought the fury of Persian archers and cavalry. Arrows rained down, but the Spartans raised their hoplites, forming a turtle, deflecting the storm with bronze. Xerxes' cavalry, the pride of the steppes, got stuck in the narrow pass. Hooves slipped on the stones, and Spartan spears found their mark. Persians retreated, leaving heaps of bodies behind as the Greek phalanx resonated with its song of courage and iron. Xerxes, watching the battle, lost his patience. His warriors died while the Spartans maintained formation with icy calm. Every step, every movement in their hands had been honed by years of training, turning the narrow passage into a trap for the enemy. The third day proved decisive. Ephialtes, a local shepherd, showed the Persians a mountain path behind the Greeks, betraying Hellas for a reward. Learning of the flanking maneuver, Leonidas gathered his warriors. He sent 3,000 allies away to live and fight in future battles. Only 300 Spartans and 700 Phocians remained, choosing honor over life. The Persians surrounded the gorge. The immortals struck with renewed force, and archers unleashed arrows. The Spartans fought fiercely. Breaking their spears, they switched to swords, then to stones and fists. Leonidas fell in the heart of the battle, while his warriors defended their king's body until his last breath. Xerxes captured Thermopylae at the cost of thousands of lives, leaving a field strewn with the dead and an eternal lesson in resilience. Leonidas and his 300 Spartans became legends. But where does the story end and myth begin? Their decision to stand until the end stemmed from the Spartan spirit. Death in battle is the crown of honor, while shame in retreat is worse than demise. They delayed Xerxes, giving Greece time for triumphs at Salamis and Plataea in 480 and 479 BCE. However, the tales of millions of Persians and 300 Spartans are highly exaggerated. Xerxes' army numbered between 100 and 200,000, while the Spartans fought alongside their allies until the last day. The oracle predicted the king's downfall for Sparta, and Leonidas' words, "We'll breakfast here and dine in hell," inspired descendants. These details may be fabrications, but they reflect their essence. After the battle, the Greeks erected a monument with the inscription, "Traveler, tell the Spartans that we lie here, faithful to their law, paying tribute to their feet." The Greco-Persian Wars elevated Sparta to the heights of glory. After Thermopylae, King Pausanias led 10,000 Spartans to victory at Plataea, crushing the Persians. This battle ended the invasion, solidifying Sparta as the pillar of the Peloponnese. Thermopylae remained an eternal symbol, where Leonidas and his warriors ignited the fire of heroism, blazing through the ages. Spartan might, tempered in the crucible of the Peloponnesian War, elevated them to the pinnacles of Greece, where the phalanx crushed enemies while Lysander's fleet shattered Athenian triremes. But triumph over Athens merely heralded twilight. Allies turned away, strength waned, and a new enemy arose to challenge their greatness. Now let's turn to the decline and sunset of Sparta, where the Battle of Leuctra ended their military supremacy. Internal crises undermined foundations, and the inability to adapt to new conditions led the once mighty power into the shadows of history. The Peloponnesian War left Sparta as the ruler of Greece, but its power proved fragile. Allies like Corinth and Thebes grew weary of Spartan oppression, while Persian gold, which brought victory over Athens, turned into a burden. The Treaty of Antalcidas in 387 BCE forced Sparta to cede to the Persian cities of Asia Minor, inciting discontent among the Greeks. Within Sparta, the number of Spartiates dwindled, undermining its strength. Full citizens gradually disappeared. Warriors claimed lives. Harsh traditions weeded out the weak. By the early 1st century BCE, fewer than 1,000 Spartans remained, instead of 8,000 during its peak. The army weakened, alliances frayed, yet Sparta clung to its former glory until it received a decisive blow. The Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE marked the end of Spartan military superiority. The Theban commander Epaminondas gathered an army to end their dominance. His troops, reinforced by the sacred band of 150 pairs, elite warriors advanced to the battlefield near Leuctra in Boeotia. Sparta, commanded by King Cleombrotus I, deployed 12,000 hoplites, of which only 700 were Spartiates. Their red cloaks fluttered in the wind, spears glittered in the sun, and the phalanx formed its customary order. Epaminondas outsmarted the enemy by strengthening the left flank with 50 rows deep instead of the usual 8 and attacked the Spartan center. The sacred band broke into the ranks of the Spartiates. The flank attack shook their formation, causing it to tremble. Cleombrotus fell. 400 Spartiates remained on the field. The rest fled. For the first time, the Spartan phalanx faced defeat, and their invincibility faded that day. The consequences of the Battle of Leuctra shocked Sparta. In 370 BCE, Epaminondas invaded Laconia, an occurrence not seen in centuries. Fields blazed, the Helots revolted, and Messenia, the land of slaves that fed Sparta, gained freedom. Half of the land and labor force vanished. The number of hoplites dwindled to 2,000. Fear of Sparta disappeared. Allies of the Peloponnesian League turned away. Corinth and Argos made peace with the Thebans, leaving Sparta isolated. Theban hegemony strengthened, while Sparta lost its status as the ruler of the land. Its power crumbled like sand under the wind's force. Internal crises accelerated the decline. The number of Spartiates fell not only due to wars but also because of Lycurgus's laws. Land passed to heirs, but if an heir had no sons, the possessions went to daughters or wealthy families. By the time of BCE, 2/5 of Sparta's land belonged to women, and many men lost citizenship for not contributing to the Syssitia. The elite simplified. Spartiates, once warriors and landowners, grew poorer, and their numbers continued to shrink. Helots and Perioikoi, the lower classes, couldn't replenish the army, while the rigorous upbringing in Agoge filtered out the weak, leaving Sparta without new fighters. Society, founded on equality and discipline, fractured. The wealthy clung to their lands, while the poor fell by the wayside, and the once formidable phalanx lost strength each year. Sparta couldn't adapt to new conditions where old norms gave way to change. Their strength lay in the phalanx and strict adherence to tradition. However, Epaminondas proved that tactics could change the outcome of a battle. Macedonia under Philip II began to rise in the 340s BCE. Its phalanx with long sarissas surpassed the Spartan one. Philip, having defeated the Greeks, posed a threat to Sparta. "If I enter Laconia, I'll destroy you." The Spartans responded with one word, a symbol of their spirit, though not of strength. Philip bypassed them, leaving them isolated. Sparta rejected change. Walls that could have protected her never got built. The fleet wasn't constructed, and trade didn't flourish. The world moved toward alliances and empires, while Sparta clung to the past, where martial valor determined everything. The decline continued mercilessly. In 362 BCE, Epaminondas defeated the Spartans again at Mantinea, although he fell in battle himself. This clash didn't restore Sparta's greatness. It only solidified her weakness. Macedonian king Alexander the Great and his successors ruled Greece, while Sparta remained sidelined. New forces drowned out her voice. Reforms by King Zagisthew and Cleomenes II in the 2nd century BCE attempted to revive the dwindling city. Aegis distributed land and Cleomenes increased the number of citizens, but their efforts faced resistance from the elite and the relentless passage of time. The Achaean League subordinated Sparta in 195 BCE, making her a junior partner. Rome completed Sparta's journey in 146 BCE, turning Laconia into a province. Sparta's decline came unnoticed. The city forged for war found no place in a world dominated by politics and trade. The Battle of Leuctra shattered their might. Internal crises undermined the foundations, while stubbornness in the face of change sealed the fall. Sparta, whose spears once pierced enemies, remains in history as a symbol of greatness that faded under the winds of a new